So, I was reading about your background a little bit, and you went to Ithaca College. So I'm kind of curious at that time, what were you, producing as far as content wise? Were you on radio, or just kind of talk about where you were at with media then?
Yeah, Nate. I mean, I mean, this is back in 1993 when I graduated high school, and I knew that I wanted to do something in the field of sports in some capacity in high school. And it occurred to me that although I played basketball and had a pretty good high school career, I knew I was going to play in college. I was not a Division I player, and I wasn't going to be able to play professionally. So I said, wait a minute, you can talk about sports and make a living out of that. And so that sort of spawned the interest in sports broadcasting. And I pursued the opportunity to be able to play basketball and study, television radio at Ithaca College. And so when I got to Ithaca, it was a phenomenal experience where I could hit the ground running, and I got to do some talk radio shows, updates on our radio station. Like, when they would do the news, I would do a 2-minute sportscast, and then from there were some TV opportunities where I did a little bit of reporting and hosting. So I got exposed to a tremendous amount at Ithaca, and I really look back at those days as, in some ways, sort of years of professional experience for myself, so that when I did become a professional in
Right.
this field, I'd already had a wealth of experience.
Okay. So, this next question kind of leads into that. So I read, it was interesting to me that the way you answered this person's question was, as a college student, the thing that you remember was staying in on the weekends, right? And so how did that, I read that, and that kind of made me want to ask, how did that shape, in a way, how did that, form good habits and kind of shape your future in the long run?
It was discipline. It was, you don't just show up. Look, it's like basketball, right? You don't just show up and play games. You practice and you work on things in your downtime. And for me, I was surrounded by a lot of very good broadcasters who were, in many cases, older than I was when I got there, and they sort of sharpened me. It was, if you want to be as good as John Mita Perrell or Scott Matthews, you got to do your work. If you want to be as good as, and John Mita Perrell is calls games for Boston College and ESPN right now. Scott Lauer, who was a year ahead of me at Ithaca, was the voice of the Charlotte Bobcats and Hornets for a while. Andrew Marchand worked at ESPN, and now he writes for the New York Post. A lot of very, very talented broadcasters who were my classmates, colleagues at Ithaca when I was there, guys who forced me to be better. So, it was again, if you want to be at a certain level, you got to put in the work. So it was an easy decision to stay in on Friday nights and do depth charts and things like that.
Right. So now obviously, you kind of have multiple roles at ESPN, and I see you, I'll see you on, I think, baseball, college football, obviously basketball. So just kind of talk about that experiences, you get to pivot, to each sport. So just kind of talk about like that, having the trust, from ESPN to put you in those positions.
That's a great point you make, Nate, and it's a great word to use because there is trust, and I mean, I'd like to hope that not everyone can do what I do, and because it goes back to the work ethic that I have. I work really hard to immerse myself in these different sports.
Right.
For a while, a good portion of my career here at ESPN, I did SportsCenter, and so you're sort of covering a lot of different sports and things, but you're not deep diving. On college basketball, we could be in a situation where we've got to speak about Winthrop, or we've got to talk for 10 minutes about Texas Tech, or I've got to jump in, as what happened 3 weeks ago, and call a Kentucky-Florida game with Danny Manning from the studio 20 minutes ahead of time because Bob Wischusen and Dick Vitale's microphones aren't working. So, yeah, it's incumbent upon those of us who are entrusted with that opportunity to do your homework and be good at it, because you'll be snuffed out pretty quickly by people who say, you know what, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. This gal isn't very good. She's not plugged in, because people love ESPN and they're passionate about their teams. So there is a big responsibility that comes with it, and I embrace it because I love it.
Absolutely. And you're really fun to watch on TV. So leading into that now, this is mainly a college basketball focused podcast. So I'm going to ask you about, your role on a studio versus, your role, on play-by-play or calling a game. So I'm just kind of curious, how do you prepare for each role?
Well, so the mechanics of studio and play-by-play obviously are very different, but in some ways the goal is the same. I view my goal, whether it's in studio or on a game, as to put my analyst in the best possible position. Like, a lot of people make it about themselves, and that's not how I want to be judged. I want to be judged as a guy who gets the best out of his person, who he's working with, who puts them in the best position
Yeah.
to make a salient point. So when I'm doing a game, we are deep diving on the team. As I did an Oklahoma State game this past Monday, Oklahoma State and Iowa State. So you're really digging in on the storyline surrounding both of these teams. Who's playing? Who's not playing? What's been the story of each team in a season? A guy like Cade Cunningham, where does he fit in the NBA, draft situation? Rasheer Bolton, what's he been asked to do for Iowa State? So you're really hyper focused on two different teams. And then, of course, if you get into a conversation about, hey, did you see what happened yesterday in the Pac-12?
Right.
You can touch on that, but you're hyper focused on two teams. When you're in studio, you're aware of 20, 30 different games that are going on and big storylines that are happening. And what was the big takeaway from this past weekend? And what does coach want to talk about? What is he hot on that I can tee him up on? So it's a little bit more of macro when you're doing studio versus micro when you're calling a game and you're really in on two teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. So like, obviously I always have a TV on for college basketball, and you always see, the sport. My favorite part of watching college basketball is the studio at halftime and right after a game before the next tip off. So obviously people only see that for, 10 total minutes, but you guys are in there working. So I'm curious, what are you guys doing while, the game is being broadcasted and then it switches right to you?
Awesome question. So we're up on the set here, talking with our producer. Okay, here's what's coming up at halftime. These are the games we're going to be talking about. What, if we have time to have a discussion about something, what do you want to be it about? So coach is very hot on this particular game or this team, or, hey guys, you know what? That's important, but the biggest win of the weekend was Oklahoma, and they've got 4 top 10 wins this month.
Yeah.
So it's those discussions that are happening. And then we've got a bank of monitors, and we're watching all these games. Hey, did you see what happened there? Or, wow, this guy's limping on the sidelines. Let's remember that for halftime, or whatever the case may be. So I'm not telling you we're watching 20 games at a time, but we may have 4 or 5 on that we're keeping an eye on and watching. And again, I'm listening to something. This holds true for games too. When we're live, when we're able to be in with people at a game, it's you're talking to a coach and you're looking at your analyst and seeing what makes his ears perk up when this player or this coach says that. And the same is true when you're in studio. If I see Seth Greenberg watching something and say, man, Duke is playing really well, I know when we have that Duke highlight, I'm going to get him to that point. So it's a lot of listening and paying attention to what people around you are saying.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to just give you a couple guys' names that I've talked to on my podcast, and I just want you to kind of quick hit like how you would set them up or just how you work with them. So if you were in the studio with Jay Billis.
Well, Jay is the gold standard. I mean, Jay is, he's exceptional. He's so great at analyzing games and being able to break down teams and coaches. I've been to as many countries with Jay Billis as I have, I think, with my wife, because we've gotten to do the Armed Forces Classic before. Listen, for me, when Jay is on TV, I stop and pay attention because he's that good.
Yeah, for sure. So how about, Joe Lunardi?
No one's got a better handle on resumes and teams and their, big wins and bad losses. And it's remarkable when the month of February and March come around, what a handle he has on so many different teams. It's one thing to know about the top 10 teams. It's another thing to know about the 35th to 60th best teams in college basketball and have all of their resumes in your head. He's outstanding. He's the best at it.
All right, last one. Fran Fraschilla.
as passionate as there is in college basketball, obviously knows the Big 12 as well as anybody, but certainly has a great grasp on the rest of college basketball. And you watch a game and you listen to how Fran responds to certain plays or individuals, and he's got a lot of Tony Romo in him because he's excited as the fan who's sitting at home, and that's a contagious, infectious characteristic.
For sure. So now something I've came across is the, KC's mid-major top 10, and obviously being on a mid-major team, that's really cool to see, you giving some mid-majors some love. So I'm just kind of curious, how did that idea start?
It's just what you said. It's, hey, every night we're going to talk about Duke and Kentucky and Kansas and blah, 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 blah. And that's great.
Right.
Those teams obviously are the ones that move the needle, but that doesn't mean that other teams and players in college basketball aren't really good. I just thought there was a void there. And you know what? For me, it's an opportunity to say, hey guys, pay attention. Winthrop and Drake are having really, really good years. They may not be on your radar. You may have been watching the NFL for the past 4 months,
Yeah.
and now you're just getting into college basketball, or you may be super passionate about the major conferences. Well, you know what? The teams that are going to win games in March, they're on this list. The players who are going to play. Look at the NBA right now, and look at the top 15, 20 players in the NBA. I would be willing to bet that there are about as many guys who played at the mid-major ranks as there are who played at the major level ranks.
Yeah.
And for me, just as someone who's super passionate about telling stories about people, who don't necessarily get that shine, to me, this was a great vehicle to do it, and it's been well received.
For sure. It's awesome. So, okay. So now obviously you've hosted SportsCenter a bunch of times, and that's like, the most popular sports show on television. So I'm just kind of curious, what was the first time, hosting a show like?
It was a dream come true. And what's so funny about it, Nate, is that I never, I can remember as far back probably to like the mid 80s. I can remember going up to my grandfather's house in upstate New York and being like, what is this channel that plays only sports? This is amazing.
Yes.
So I was aware and I loved ESPN, but it was, as I got older, the dream was not to get to ESPN. I always thought, man, there's so many people there. I'll go the local TV route and I'll be the sportscaster at the local NBC affiliate in New York City. And I got to do that. And then the opportunity to come to ESPN came along, and it was a dream. It was a dream opportunity. And now that I've been here now for almost 13 years, I can't imagine wanting to be anywhere else because, local news, you do a 2.5-minute sportscast. Here, you could do a 4-hour show, or you could be in studio all day doing college basketball games. So the very first Sports Center I ever did was with Jay Harris. I'll never forget it. Couldn't ask for a better co-anchor to work with. And I vividly remember Nate taking the time to look around and taking the opportunity and see that this is the greatest sports studio TV show in the history of television, and soak this moment in because you only get to do it once. So I was very much in the moment, but also very aware of the fact that I've got a job to do and I want to do it well.
For sure. So you've done big time college basketball games. I got to ask you, what are some that stick out to you as just being, unbelievable to be a part of?
I called a game in Gallagher-Iba Arena 2 years ago for the first time. I was doing a Big 12 package, and I'd never been to any of these gyms in the Midwest at all. And there are, each one of them individually is great. Baylor's got a nice arena. Oklahoma's got a nice arena. Iowa State, Hilton Coliseum is cool. Gallagher-Iba Arena is different. It's a different feeling there. So It was a thrill to be able to do a couple of games there. Probably the most memorable game that I've ever done. I'm a diehard Syracuse fan, and I got to do a ranked Marquette team playing a ranked Syracuse team in the Carrier Dome. And again, it was kind of a moment where I looked around, and I'm looking around at 30,000 people calling a ranked matchup of my favorite team. And I said, this isn't a bad way to make a living.
Right. For sure. So, okay, now I want to go I just want to ask you your overall thoughts on the 2021 season. Like, obviously it's a different type of season, but like we say at Winthrop, like, we're just blessed to be even doing this.
And we say the same thing here in Bristol. I mean,
Right.
It's so true. I mean, there's You think about, all of the, the casualties of this awful virus and how it's impacted our country and the world in so many ways. And, but sports is a huge
Yeah.
release for a lot of people. It's a huge opportunity for you guys to get out and do something and play the sport that you love. It's an opportunity for viewers to watch. It's an opportunity for those of us who work in the industry to work in this industry. And so I'm just so happy that we have forged ahead and that we've been safe, obviously, because it's given us a great NBA season and a great Major League Baseball season and NFL season and college basketball and college football season.
Yeah.
So it's been a very, very different time, but it's been great that we've gone ahead and done it.
Yeah, for sure. So one final question here. What is like the best part about working at ESPN?
I mean, it's I'll answer it like this. It's work some days, but it's never work, I mean, like the things that you find yourself complaining about when you step back and take a look at it, you're like, what the hell am I complaining about? I mean, you know what?
Yeah.
Days may be long. You may be asked to work crazy hours. You may be asked to work a lot of days in a row, but it's the best place that you could possibly want to work if you're a sports fan.
Mhm.
And we have virtually every sport at the highest levels. We have the best people, in my opinion, in the industry who you can call your peers. And you're held accountable. I mean, you need to be great on a daily basis, or else you'll stick out like a sore thumb because just about everyone that works here is great. So to me, it's energizing. It's like getting ready to play in a big game, and you got to bring it every day. And I get the chance to talk college basketball in the winter, baseball in the summer, and football in the fall. And those are my three favorite sports, along with boxing. And so for me, it's there's no place I'd rather be.